The rising impact of the coronavirus is yet to truly spook markets, and one Australian fund manager says any pain will be short-lived. Magellan Financial Chairman Hamish Douglass, who has $100 billion under management, says the bigger impact on markets remains the US-China trade war. I spoke to him and intelligence and geopolitics expert Michael Morell, who says China has been surprisingly transparent with the world. Hamish Douglass, Michael Morell, welcome back to the business.
Thank you for having us here.
It's great to be with you, Rachel.
Michael, if I can start with you, the world has been gripped by coronavirus. What have we learnt about China in the way that it's dealt with this, in terms of its response from a health perspective, but also as to how transparent they've been?
Rachel, they've been more transparent with coronavirus than they have with similar outbreaks in the past, but they have not been fully transparent. And I think there's two separate issues here. One is that they haven't been fully transparent with what they know, and then what they know is not complete. So they don't have a full understanding of the number of cases, for example. So I think we've learned that they're perhaps a little bit more transparent than they have been historically, but they still have a way to go.
Hamish, your fund has recently taken a $1 billion stake in Chinese internet services agent Tencent. How is coronavirus impacting your investment decisions now?
Yeah, it's not having a major impact on our investment decisions. We've got 7 large investments that are exposed to China. It's just not Tencent. We own another very large tech company, Alibaba, in China. But we've also got companies like Louis Vuitton or LVMH and Starbucks. Their businesses in the short term are going to be impacted quite dramatically. You know, if you're a luxury company, no one's shopping in China. And very importantly, the Chinese are very large travellers, and they've shut down the airports, and they're not travelling anywhere in the world. So if we look this quarter that's going to come up, there's going to be quite a severe impact on businesses like LVMH. There's going to be big impacts on businesses like Starbucks. Half their stores are closed in China as we speak. But we don't think it's going to have any lasting impact on those businesses. And actually, the markets largely look through. There's been very little share price impact through coronavirus initially, but the share prices have pretty much steadied.
Michael, we've seen production lines halted, workers sent home. The country more or less has come to a standstill. Is this good news for Donald Trump?
No, I don't think so. I don't think any outbreak of a disease is good news for anybody. Certainly not good news for the people that have been infected and the risks it's created and the economic damage that it's created. So no, I don't think it's in Donald Trump's interest that the coronavirus is broken out.
Some say a resolution has been reached between the US and China on the trade war, but has it really? Is this more of a pause? Because of course there are still tariffs in place.
Yeah, I think this is, we are at a pause, and I think the politics of where we are is almost perfect for the president, because he can tell his supporters that he came to a partial deal, and it was the best deal we've ever had with the Chinese. He will claim that, but he will also claim that there is more work that needs to be done and there's more pressure to put on China. So it allows him to both play to his base that he's capable of coming to trade deals while also signaling that we're far from over in terms of the pressure on China.
Hamish, you've previously told this program that the US trade war was the most important thing impacting markets. Is it still front and centre for you?
Look, it's front and centre in the longer term, and obviously we've had very strong markets with two effects in the last 12 months. The truce with China has been positively taken by markets, and it should be. But that doesn't, as Michael was saying, that doesn't overcome some longer term issues. Here Trump is going to raise more issues, but the longer term, I would say the technology war between the countries, but also the geopolitical war, that hasn't been resolved at all, and we obviously have to think about that as investors. And the other issue that's happened in the last 12 months, the US Federal Reserve has changed its whole direction on monetary policy. In 2018 they were rising interest rates, and 2019 they've been cutting interest rates. And you know, if you looked in the last quarter of 2018, the markets crashed 20%. In 2019, markets rallied 30%, and part of the 30% is due to the truce with China, and the rest is due with monetary policy and interest rates in the world.
I just want to emphasize the point that Hamish made, that this is far from over, this competition between the United States and China. It's much deeper than just a trade deficit or trade. It is about a geopolitical competition for influence around the world. It's about a military competition in East Asia, and it's about the economic competition for high technology that Hamish talked about. So that has not even begun to be worked out by either side.
So are we looking at this as being an issue for years to come then?
Absolutely. This is a decades-long issue, I think.
Hamish, if a deal is reached or if this goes on for decades, what's the ongoing impact for Australia?
Well, it's a very interesting question, and maybe Michael could answer his view on this. Australia has been receiving a massive economic dividend from China. We have been one of the major beneficiaries in our resources sector, but also in our services sector, in education and travel in particularly. And China, with its rise, and we don't think whatever's going on, China's rise is going to stop. There are 17 to 20 million people moving into cities every year in China. That means over the next decade, 170 to 200 million people are going to move into cities in China. That is nearly 2/3 of the population of the United States, and that is a massive economic opportunity for Australia. As they move in, these people are going to continue to travel, they want to be educated, they're going to consume resources. We've still got a massive economic dividend, but we've got this geopolitical tension with the West. Is Australia going to cut off its economic ties? Is it going to be forced to cut off its economic ties and be tied in to much more of a geopolitical tussle with the United States? Are we going to be forced to choose in the future between our allies, between our defence interests, and between our economic interests? It's a very interesting question that Australia and other countries in Asia are going to have to come to grips with.
Rachel, one of the reasons why it's important that the United States and China figure out a way to work together rather than to conflict, to competition and conflict, is that we don't put countries like Australia in such a situation. Because I fear at the end of the day that if we force countries to make a choice between their security interests and their economic interests are going to win every time.
If we turn to the US, Michael, they're gearing up for what could be a battle of the billionaires in the US election if Michael Bloomberg wins the support of the Democrats. How do you see that race playing out between Donald Trump and Michael Bloomberg?
So I think, and I'm not an expert on this, I'm kind of an interested viewer myself, but I think Michael Bloomberg would be a tough competitor for Donald Trump. I think he would give Donald Trump a pretty good race. My concern about Michael Bloomberg is whether he's capable of winning the Democratic primary. Almost half the Democratic primary electorate is far left. These are people with deep economic apprehension, deep economic anxiety. These are the supporters of Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, and I don't see them supporting a billionaire, let alone Michael Bloomberg. So he's going to have a very hard time winning the Democratic primary, although I do think he would be a tough competitor for President Trump.
Michael, should national security be the #1 issue for governments, indeed businesses around the world?
No, I don't think so. Actually, I think economics should be. I think, Rachel, at the end of the day, the most important determinant of a country's national security is the health of its economy and its society. So those countries who are healthy economically and healthy from a social perspective, in the long run are going to win the geopolitical war. So I think that's where our focus should be.
Hamish, you're known for investing in companies like Starbucks, Facebook, Visa. What do you make of the ASX's launch of a tech index today?
I think it's really probably a stamp on direction of what's happening in the world. These tech companies and these tech platforms are winning. They're creating new markets. They're taking market share from old industries. They're disrupting industries. It's still a pretty small sector in Australia, and in a global sector, our tech sector is minuscule in the scheme of things. But we've got a very big focus in our portfolios on global technology, and therefore the ASX highlighting it within the Australian market I think we're going to have more tech-related businesses grow out of Australia. So, you know, I'm supportive of the move by the ASX, but we have to put in context it's still very small in the scheme of the investment opportunity. I mean, in Australia. Globally, it's obviously much larger.
Hamish, your recent results exceeded market expectations, a 13% increase on your half-year profit. Can you sustain that kind of growth in this slowing economy?
Well, if you can tell me exactly what's going to happen in markets in the next period ahead, you know, I could then predict our profits. You know, most of our profits is driven by our investment returns. We earn our revenue on our funds under management. Most of our funds under management grow by the investment returns. The last 12 months we've had very strong markets and we've had strong investment returns, so not surprisingly our financial results have been strong. I'm not going to go and predict what our profits could do over time, and frankly my prediction may not be any more accurate than other people's predictions on that.
Hamish Douglass, Michael Morell, it's been good to talk to you on The Business. Thank you.
Good to talk to you, Rachel.
Thank you, Rachel.